gosh, it's so brilliant to see you. Thank you so much for chatting to us today. How are
Oh,
you?
thank you. Thank you so much for having me. Yes, everything is so great. I'm so thrilled about my album release, which is happening so soon. And it is my long-awaited classical album.
It's so exciting. You've gone back to your classical roots, and
Yes,
it is the most beautiful repertoire that you've chosen.
thank
So
you.
gorgeous. And I just listened to it and I just felt transported into the world of beautiful classical magic with goosebumps and just the orchestra that you're singing with. It's so perfect. And
Wow.
how did you decide what to put on the album? Because I bet you've collected like so many classical favorites throughout the years. How did these this special set list make the cut?
Well, as you said, I have been collecting a lot of these arias for many years. And it's sort of a reflection on all of those years of collecting songs and putting together something very special. I've been wanting to record a classical album forever. I guess I studied at the Conservatorium of Music here in Brisbane, and then after I graduated from university, I was sort of at a crossroads. What am I going to do here? Am I
Yeah.
going to go down the operatic pathway, or am I going to do more concert work where my classical crossover repertoire would take over? At the time, I had a wonderful vocal coach called Horst Hoffmann, who was a very well known Wagnerian tenor. He sang around the world in opera houses and also in Australia as well with Dame Joan Sutherland. And I had just won the Dame Joan Sutherland Opera Award. So he had
Amazing.
reached
That's so
out.
exciting.
I know, and
Congratulations. That's so
he'd reached
cool.
out and said, "Shall we do an audition tour around Germany? I know all the opera houses there. Let's do an audition tour and go around and get you in one of the opera houses in Germany." However, in the meantime, when all of this was being planned, I received a random phone call from Andre Rieu. I guess you could say the king of the waltz, and I guess the king of classical crossover instrumental music.
Yes.
And so, I mean, he calls me up. My aunt sent a random message to the guest book, which was on his website. This was in the time when people had guest books on their website.
Yeah.
Remember how cool that was?
Yeah.
So he doesn't have that anymore. And basically, my aunt just said, "Look, this is her website. If you're interested, reach out." On my website at the time was my telephone number. It's not on there anymore, so you don't need to go
Oh.
looking there. And so he just called me, and it was so out of the blue. I didn't know that she was doing that. So I ended up touring with Andre Rieu for over a decade. He taught me everything I
Wow.
needed to know. And I did get to sing a lot of classical music on the road
Yeah.
with him, of course, classical arias and lots of operetta. And of course, lots of musical theatre stuff as well. So the real classical crossover repertoire I got to really be involved in and loved it. And it opened up a whole world for me. You know, I got to travel the world and extensively at that. You know, I know that you're in the UK, Joanna, and I mean, I toured through the UK multiple times, and I know
Amazing.
a lot of the audience of the Classical Crossover magazine are from the USA, and I toured
Yeah.
extensively there as well. Of course, in Australia, New Zealand, Asia, Africa, everywhere. We went everywhere, Europe. So
So cool.
I know it was exciting and special, but I collected music as I went. And
Yes.
so this album, Classique, it is my really, I guess you'd say it's my real musical baby, because I've been working on this for a very long time. Ever since I won the Dame Joan Sutherland Opera Award, she sent me a letter and she said, "You should follow the operatic career path, because this is going to be where your voice really lies and where it suits." But then at that time, I had the offer from Andre, and it was an offer I couldn't refuse. So I guess I'm finally honoring Dame Joan Sutherland with what she asked me to do. And so the first track on the album as well is from Romeo and Juliet by Gounod, and it's called Ah, je veux vivre. And she sang this so beautifully in her time, and so in a way, this is my way to honor her. And I guess because it's a little bit coloratura sort of repertoire, it was never in my voice. But I feel as though with all that time that's passed since I won the Dame Joan Sutherland Opera Award and I was a purely lyric soprano, I feel that my voice has developed. And as time goes on, your voice does change a lot. And now that I'm in my 30s, I feel like my voice has really opened itself to a different style, and I'm able to reach those higher notes that I was never able to get to before.
That's so exciting, isn't it? Like you just never know what's round the corner, how your voice is going to develop, what you're going to find, what's going to be part of your repertoire, because you're so versatile, because you can do musical theatre, jazz, like all of it, pop. And I suppose the
Yeah,
Andre Rieu was such a good sort of grounding, wasn't it? Because it's such
yeah,
a eclectic mix of what you got to sing. But this is
absolutely.
but this is back to your roots, because you were very young when you won that award. You were only 21, weren't you? So
That's right.
I guess at that age you don't know what the future's going to hold, and to have
No,
committed to purely the opera route, you didn't know at that point that the stars were going to align and you were just going to go on tour
I
with
know.
the
I
most
know.
amazing sort of party concert. It just looks so much fun, like the joy in those
Yeah,
concerts, the joy that it gives to people. And I also think it's amazing because it isn't necessarily people who would, have a passion for classical music who would go to those concerts. It's people who just enjoy music, want to be entertained, and just want to be opened up to sort of anything, even though it is an orchestra with like classically trained people providing that entertainment. It's sort of
yeah.
really, it is the epitome of sort of crossover, isn't it? Really, he's
It
taking,
really is.
yeah, he's
And
taking.
it's making the music accessible, as you said, to the masses, to people who may be frightened to enter a concert hall and see a symphony orchestra play. This is making it accessible for them to then say, well, you know what, that wasn't so bad, so now I dare to go to my local symphony, or I dare to go to the opera house and see an opera put on in my city. That's what this has enabled people to do. And I think I learned a lot from that. I mean, Andre really took me under his wing and was a mentor to me. And
Oh,
so I guess
lovely.
I learned a lot about how the industry works, about the business behind it, which I find is really a key part to being a successful artist. But also what he taught me was that you've got to do what you love inside your heart, and the audience will follow you and follow what you love. And if not, you'll find a new audience. It's always that way. And I guess with this particular album, Classique, where it's really going classical, I have a following, and I want to introduce my following to this more classical side of my voice. A lot of people have already been asking for this for years. When is your classical album coming out? Where can we buy an album of just you singing opera? Well, finally, it is going to be available, and this is a really exciting journey, not only for me but for my audience to experience something a little bit different. And for the people that are a little bit hesitant, then this is almost like a tester or a taste for what you can expect when you hear opera or classical music being sung.
Oh, definitely. And I think because you've done such like extensive touring and you've built such a huge fan base, this is the perfect time to release something like Classique. Because exactly as you've said, there might be people who've loved you singing musical theatre, or, some of the big sort of like jazz standards. But because they love you, they're like, well, we are going to definitely get Classique. And then you've opened them up into a whole world of all these beautiful arias that
Mm,
you've recorded, which is, again, it's really sort of taking now something so sort of traditionally classique, and then crossing over to the audience, which is just amazing. And
thank you.
what do you think was your main takeaway from Andre Rieu and all his mentoring? So he was like do what you love and the audience will come and they'll follow you? Do you think there was anything else that you think, oh yeah, this is what he said, and I'm going to sort of, hold on to that pearl of wisdom?
The thing that he taught me was to just be yourself. And I remember when I went to do my first radio and TV interviews with Andre, and as soon as
Yeah.
I started working with him, the cameras were in our face. We were filming a reality TV show at the time called Welcome to My World, and it was on Sky in the UK, and then
That
it
was
went
quite a lot for you
worldwide.
then. Yeah, that
Yes,
that
and
was
so
quite a
suddenly,
thing.
I've gone from graduating from the conservatorium to having this camera and this boom mic in my face and going, okay, what do I say here? And I was 21, so you're very young, you're impressionable, you see everybody else, and you don't know what to do. So I kind of started trying, like, oh, should I make myself more interesting? Should I put on weird clothes? What should I do here? What do I do to make myself more interesting? And Andre said, what? No, just be yourself. That's interesting enough. And if you try to be something that you're not, one day you'll get caught out and someone will say, well, that's not who she really is. So I think that was the best lesson I learned from him, was just to be yourself. And I think doing that keeps you really grounded as well, because you just are who you are. There's no facade, there's no lies. There's just, who I am is who I am. So if you see me on stage or on Welcome to My World on Sky Arts, or if you see me wherever, if you see me at the local shopping center, I'm the same person. I won't be a different person. I'm just who I am. And I think that was a very important lesson.
I think that is such a valuable lesson. It's like, I think because training is quite intense, if you're going to train for the entertainment industry, I think sometimes you can probably leave and think, am I enough? Like, am I doing it right?
Yeah.
Am I who I'm meant to be?
You are enough just by being who you are. I mean, as an individual person who is singing on the stage, or if you're playing whatever you're doing, if you're playing an instrument, or if you're part of the lighting and sound team, you are enough, because you're all part of one big moving thing, which it could be a tour or it could be a concert. You are just who you are. You can't change that, and you shouldn't, because then that's really false, isn't it?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And also a bit of a pressure to always have to pretend to be something.
Yeah, I would hate that. I'd hate it if I'd pretended to put on an accent and I'd be like, "Oh, I've got an interview with Joanna Forrest now. I've got to go into my fake UK accent that isn't really me." Like, it would just be so weird.
Pretty
And
good. That's a pretty good English
was it all
accent there.
right?
I think it was.
I love accents. Actually, you probably can agree with me. As a singer, you tend to mimic. And so
Yeah.
if I would talk to you for too long, I would really start to get it. In fact, if you listen to this interview at the start and then you listen to me at the end, I probably sound a bit more like you at the end, because I really mimic. My parents always knew who I was talking to on the phone, because I'd always copy the way that their voice would sort of swing or go, or if they had an accent. I had a Canadian friend when I was younger, and I'd get off the phone and be like, "Yeah, mom and dad."
But that's also probably because you're really good at languages, aren't you? Because you speak lots of languages, don't you? And
Yeah, I
that's probably
do.
why you've got such a good ear, because you've had to be so flexible when you're speaking
Yes,
different languages because am I right that there's like Dutch and German and French,
yes.
and that's
Oh, look, the Dutch is fluent. It was actually my first language. And then I learned English when I had to go to school. My parents are Dutch immigrants that came to Australia. And then I guess living in the Netherlands, I lived so close to the border of Germany, and a lot of the orchestra are German. So I just really picked that up very quickly. And we toured through Germany extensively on month-long tours through Germany. So, and I guess it's quite similar to Dutch in a way. So that's quite an easy language to pick up. And then when you're traveling through countries like Italy or France or Spain, you tend to sort of pick up that as well.
that is very impressive. I could go around Italy, France, and Spain and not pick up the language. So, and
Look,
that
it
must
just depends on how important food is to you and how desperately you want to order it.
and how much you want to understand the menu and what you're getting. But that must also help with your with your repertoire, because it's, that you're all the pronunciation and the meaning behind the song, it's all there for you because you're understanding it.
Absolutely, and this particular album, Classique, and the live show, which we are having our opening night this coming weekend.
That's
There's
exciting.
so many languages. We start in Italian, we go into Norwegian, we have German, there's Czech, there's French, there's Latin. So you're delving into so many different languages that you also need to understand what you're singing, so that basic knowledge of those languages does come through. But it is lovely. I love singing in different languages. It's such a challenge, and I like being unusual. My name Mirusia, it's an unusual name. It's Polish, and it means bringing happiness to others.
Oh,
And
wow. And
I
you've done that with your singing. Wow.
oh I have a great story about that, which we can touch on later with my efforts in volunteering. But my
Yes.
middle name is actually Joanna.
No way.
Yeah.
Wow. Oh my gosh,
Yes.
that's
So we
exciting.
are really linked, you and I. And I'm wearing forest
Wow.
green today.
Oh my gosh. Exactly. We totally are. Oh my word, that's exciting. Yay.
Yes.
Oh,
But
that's
yeah,
very cool.
I've always loved being unusual, and I guess that shines through also in the music. I've always been the odd one out. When I did talent
Mm,
quests back
mm.
in the 90s and the 2000s, when talent quests were all we had, we didn't have Australian Idol or The Voice back then. We had shopping center talent quests,
Wow.
and I'd always be the one singing musical theater or opera stuff, and I was the only one doing that. Everyone else was singing Shania Twain or Celine Dion songs, and then there I came singing a show tune, and it was different. It was unusual, and it's just I guess it's the way that I've always rolled.
Definitely. And you're about to take this beautiful album on tour. Um, that must be so exciting. Something that you've created for a while now. You've decided what's going to be on the album. You've gone through the creative process of recording it, and now you get to do it live and you get to share it with people, you and them, rather than them streaming it by themselves, which they're going to absolutely love, but you're going to be able to now see the reactions,
Mm.
because you're going to be there. What is your favorite part of, now you've recorded it, and that's enjoyable as well in its own way, isn't it, recording? But now you get to perform these beautiful
Yeah.
classical arias in front of people. That's just going to be so lovely to share that side, isn't it?
It is lovely, and I think the thing that makes live performance different from an album is that you get to actually talk about the songs and speak
Mm,
to the audience, and I love that. I do really enjoy having a conversation with my audience, and it is an open conversation. I do enjoy having feedback from the audience, and speaking to people and hearing their reactions and asking questions during a concert. That's part of how I run my shows. And I love that interaction. I find it really important because the audience are really part of it then, and don't feel like it's just me singing to a wall. Um, but the great thing is you can explain a little more in depth, what is this song about and why am I singing it, and reasons why, it behind the scenes stories of when I performed it, for example,
mm.
somewhere else, or when something happened or something went wrong. Those things are really, really quite enjoyable to share with an audience. So, yeah, there is a difference. However, when you record an album in studio, it's again a totally different vibe because it's just you and a microphone in a small little vocal booth. Usually, I recorded my vocals in Melbourne with my producer Michael Cristiano, and we had a really enjoyable time. I recorded it over a small period of time, 6 days, which is not a very large time frame for an album of
It's
this
it's it's
size.
it, no, you're absolutely right. So for anyone who's listening, who's wondering about that, when you're recording these type of arias, that's very speedy, isn't it? So there must have, I
Yeah,
guess, there was a lot of rehearsal before you stepped into the recording studio, and
yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. I mean, and also I'm one of those people that I love to record, and I want it to sound like I'm actually singing it live. I don't want it to sound like it's fake or that it's been edited. So I will do take after take, and we will use a take. I'm not going to sit there and edit little bits because that's fake. If I can't sing it live, then why am I singing it on a recording? I don't find that fair for my
Mm.
audience. That's fake. And I think that's probably one of the things I also learned from Andre was if you can't sing it live, then why would we record that? That's silly. It's not real then. And especially when it comes to this style of music, I mean, you've got to be able to belt this out live. Otherwise, there's no real point to having a classical album. I spent a lot of time on two particular arias on the album, and others I spent, one take wonder. For example, the Barcarolle, which I sang together with Leo Bramson, who's a wonderful Wagnerian soprano from Melbourne. One take, like it was just, and we were like, oh, was that it? And my producer said maybe we should do another take just to have something just in case. And we did it again, and we're like, nah, first take was better.
Sometimes it is, isn't it? And
I
also,
know.
it's like you're so right about if you get this sort of the story arc if you're going to sing a whole take, whereas if you're like,
Mm,
oh, I like that word, but I liked that word, and then maybe you don't get the sense of the emotion that you've
no,
brought
you
to it
wouldn't.
if it's all sort of
No.
chopped up and then put
And you hear
together.
that. I think you really hear that as well, because every time you perform a piece, it has slight differences. So, you can't really chop things up, especially not in this style of music. So, yeah, it is a lovely process to be able to do. You do need to be prepared. And I like being prepared and going into studio and being able to say at 4 o'clock, well, I'm done now. I'm going to go and have a nice dinner. So rather than spending my whole day until midnight sitting there in the studio going, oh my goodness, we're just not getting this right.
Oh, definitely. And then when you take that to an audience, and you were talking about how you really enjoy connecting with an audience and having a chat with them, and it being sort of
Mm.
very, like a conversation. So you're taking feedback from them and really including them. Is that something that you would completely prepare, or is it a bit more organic? Like sometimes you're like, oh, I'm saying this and I didn't know I was going to say this, or I'm telling
Oh,
this
yeah.
story and I hadn't planned to tell this story. It's just all coming out. Yes, didn't know it was going to go this way.
Absolutely. You get on stage as me and you go, okay, what am I going to say now? And I mean, obviously, I've prepared. I know what I'm talking about. However, I don't really have a set script. And it's very much on the day. Every performance is different. And I think that's part of the appeal, I guess, to my repeat customers who keep coming back because they know every show is going to be a completely different show. And I often, in my concerts, I have an audience participation segment where they get to choose what the next song will be.
Wow,
So
that's
basically, I'm just like,
cool.
you guys choose what's the next one. So by request, and that's really fun. And in the Classique concert, that is different because we have classical arias that, they're choosing from. So they've all been studied. They're all in here. So we're ready to do that. And it's a lot of fun because the audience are then so involved because they're choosing the set list. So it's different every night.
Wow, that's so exciting for them, because it means that also if they come back, they're going to have a completely different experience
Yeah.
if you're coming to their hometown and they're seeing like a couple of shows. And
Yeah.
I bet you've also learned how to take that real sort of party celebration feeling from Andre's shows as well, which just
Oh, yes.
must be so lovely, because classical music doesn't have to be so kind of, we're all going to sit very quietly
Oh,
and
yes. No.
listen very seriously. It can be joyous.
Oh,
But I think,
absolutely.
do you think in Australia is there a more relaxed feeling towards classical music, or is it a bit like the same here, that it's a very serious business and we're all going to sit very quietly and listen very intently, or do you think, or is it a bit more relaxed, do you think?
I think it depends on who you ask.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Look, I would love to see classical music be much more accessible than it is, and I guess this is kind of my little bridge to that coming from a world where I came from a classical world, went into a classical crossover world, which I adore and love, and it is my genre. It's what I really really enjoy doing. But going back to my roots and doing this classical album and shows, it's a bridge to that. And I guess I'm following in Andre's footsteps in that way. I'm making this classical music more accessible,
Yeah.
um, and I love that. I love that because classical music was the pop music of its day. So we shouldn't forget that either. I know that time moves on and this type of music becomes old hat. However, if we just inject some life back into it and put in, as we would say in Dutch, we put on a new jacket and just make it look a little bit different, then you've got a whole new generation that can enjoy that music.
Oh, absolutely. And there's several charities that you're involved with, isn't there?
Mm.
Tell us all about that and what you're up to with them.
Well, we were talking before about how I said I'm unusual and my name is unusual and everything I do is always unusual. So when I was young and not even studying at the conservatorium yet, my mum, she was working at an aged care facility here in Brisbane. And she said to me, "Why don't you come in one day and sing for the residents? Because they would love to hear some music and it's great therapy for them." So I went along with my little CD portable deck thing and I put in a backing track CD and I started singing. But what I noticed was that there was so much energy suddenly in the room, and people looked up and were like, wow, there's music, and people's lives were being changed just by listening to music. And that was a big learning curve for me because I didn't realize the power of that music actually had. I loved music, I loved singing it, but as a teenager, you don't really realize the mental benefits of music.
Yeah,
So
you just knew that you enjoyed singing and performing.
that's right. So to be able to share that, that's great. But to be able to change somebody's day, wow, how
Wow.
fantastic. So moving on from that, I kept singing in this retirement village, and then I ended up working overseas. Heard all the time from people who were working in aged care facilities or retirement villages, oh, the residents love your DVDs and your CDs. They're always watching you. And when can you come and sing for us live in person? And then when the pandemic hit, I was in Brisbane at the time, and I had a random LinkedIn message from Silver Memories, and I had no clue what that was. And I realized that it was an aged care nostalgic broadcast service, specializing in music that would bring back silver memories, because music lives in all four quadrants of our brain. And even if we suffer from a terrible disease like dementia or Alzheimer or even Parkinson's disease, which can starve off parts of the brain, music still lives on in the other parts that are still alive. So therefore,
Wow.
it's impossible to lose that wonderful power of music. That's why
Gosh.
music is so vital in aged care, because it is a massive medium through to the brain. To somebody who might be in quite a vegetative state that maybe hasn't moved in days or even reacted, music can bring someone like that back to life and bring back actual memories. I
Wow.
think that that's incredible, and I've been part of the team. We've been studying the effects of music on the brain, and there's been a lot of fellowships that have been done to encourage this study into what music can do in the aged care sector. So I got involved with Silver Memories, and I'm so proud of that association. And then on the complete other end of the scale, we go to children, and I remember when I became involved with the Australian Children's Music Foundation. It's founded by one of my childhood idols, Don Spencer. And when I was a young girl growing up in Australia and I could only speak Dutch, I used to listen to his cassette tapes. I'm showing my age now, and his voice was what I listened to and learned about all of the Australian animals through song. because to learn a new
Wow.
language, the best way to do that is through music. So as a child, I would listen to Don, and then as I grew up, I actually met Don Spencer, and we became very, very good friends. And
That's cool.
I know, it was the weirdest thing to meet him in real life because
Yeah.
when I met him for the first time, there he was with that voice that I'd always heard, but
Yeah.
he was sitting in front of me, and just his
Wow.
speaking voice is just like his singing voice. So it was really special. So
Yeah.
I've been working with the Australian Children Music Foundation since 2009 as their international ambassador. And what we do is we bring music back into schools, music into juvenile detention centres, into Indigenous um, places in Australia where the music has been basically taken away, because music is a subject that's the first to be cut when there's budget cuts. And well, I won't stand for that. So we bring music teachers back into schools, Indigenous communities, and juvenile detention centres. And we see such a huge impact on the mental health of these kids. Some of these kids who basically didn't feel like they had anything left to live for. And these are children we're talking about. This is not adults. We're talking about kids who feel
Wow.
they've got nothing left to live for. We hand them a guitar, we give them a guitar teacher, and suddenly they have something in their life that's worth living for. And we see some of these kids go on to pursue
Mm.
successful careers in music. That's the dream, to see these kids go and live a life of music, and a good life, and be good people through the power of music. Well, there's nothing really better than that. So those are my two main charities that I do a lot of work for. And I recently, we have in Australia, we have a day called Australia Day, which is the 26th of January. And on that day, we celebrate Australia and how, we came to live as Australians together. And there are award ceremonies that are held all across Australia. And in my local area where I live this year, I'm the Citizen of the Year because of my work
Wow.
with these wonderful foundations.
Amazing.
Yeah, really proud of
Congratulations.
it.
That sounds amazing. You should be proud because that's doing life-changing work, helping young people through the power of
Mm,
music. That is that is so special, isn't it?
it is.
And
Yeah.
it is a shame that, like you say, when it's the same over here, when there's budget cuts and everything, the arts is the first to go and is considered not as important as, you know, other subjects, even though we know that, you know, number one, you could be depriving the world of like the next Elton John, but it's more that we
Yeah.
know that like music is so important for even if it's not going to be somebody's career, for creativity, for confidence, for just to have a hobby that you enjoy, and to be
Yeah.
bringing that opportunity to people who don't, young people who don't have that opportunity, is is so important. And it's also fascinating, the elderly people who can still respond to music. That is, it just blows my mind that, that I you just hope that all these studies are going to sort of like trickle down in like every care home. There's going to be music, and
Yeah.
that this is really going to be a thing, especially as we're all living longer now. These things sort of affect more people, don't they? So
Absolutely.
yeah, so that's amazing. All that work just sounds just so fantastic, that you've got all these things going on, albums and touring, but it's so fabulous that you're just
Yeah.
making time for these really, really important things. And have you got anything else that you can tell us might be on the horizon after this tour? After Classique's going to be like the hugest hit? Anything else? Have you got a concept maybe for like the next album? Oh,
Well, we're already working on that, absolutely. But that's all
amazing.
still under wraps.
Yes.
However, the Classique tour is kicking off very soon, and it will tour through Australia, and we're coming to the Netherlands as well in October and November, which is very, very exciting. So I'm really looking forward to coming over there. We're also working on some plans for the UK.
Oh,
So those
amazing.
plans are in the works. And
Great.
but continuing that international touring is obviously on the cards always, and Australia, of course, where I live. Um, but of course, my priority right now is Classique, getting it out there, and I really hope that my audience and my new audience as well, people who may be discovering me through this album for the first time, will really enjoy what we've put together with this very, very special classical album.
Oh, they're going to absolutely love it because it is so special. And I know that all the audience of Classical Crossover magazine are just going to absolutely just going to be there behind you, absolutely just loving it. It is so, so beautiful. Just, yeah, congratulations on a wonderful album. It is. It's goosebumps, beautiful, and it sort of transports you into like the magical world of the classical realm. It's just like everything about it is just so perfect. So huge
Thank you. Thank
congratulations,
you.
and
Thank you
thank
for
you
those
so.
beautiful words.
Oh, it is so lovely. Everyone is going to love it, and thank you for talking to us today and sharing so much with us. That was so lovely to chat to you,
Oh, thank you
and
for having me.
so much luck with everything.
Thank you. And to you too, and to everybody else out there as well. Let music be a wonderful part of your day every day because it changes your life. It really does.
Ah, sì.